A Christmas Homecoming. Chapter 1. Coming Home for Christmas. The snow was just starting to fall as Gretchen Walsh drove past the Welcome to Evergreen sign on the outskirts of town. Evergreen, Washington, her hometown. It had been years since she had been back, not since she left for college on the East Coast right after high school graduation. Now, on winter break during her final year of law school, Gretchen was returning home for the holidays. Driving down Main Street, everything looked just as idyllic as she remembered, with Christmas decorations lining the lampposts and fresh powder starting to coat the ground. Evergreen was like a scene from a Hallmark movie, quaint shops with warm glowing lights and garland adorning every eave. Gretchen sighed, feeling nostalgic despite herself. She had been so ready to leave this small town behind as a teenager, but now in her late 20s, she felt a longing for the simpler times of her youth. She pulled up to the two-story craftsman-style house where she grew up. Snow blanketed the sloping front yard. Her mother must have been watching for her because the front door swung open as soon as Gretchen stepped out of the car. "Gretchen, there's my girl," her mother cried, rushing down the front steps to wrap Gretchen in a crushing hug. "Nice to see you too, Mom," Gretchen said, the greeting muffled against her mother's shoulder. After the enthusiastic greeting on the front walkway, her mother helped carry her bags upstairs to her childhood bedroom. The decor had been updated, but it still held echoes of her high school self in the soft green walls and pictures on the shelf. Looking out the second-story window, she could see the town square in the distance where they held so many events when she was young. The Christmas tree lot on the edge of town, the steeple of the community church. It was like entering a time capsule back to her youth. Later that night, after a filling dinner of her mom's famous pot roast, Gretchen settled under the covers of her full-sized bed, feeling like a kid again. She fell asleep hoping this trip home would bring some peace and closure after years away. Chapter 2. The Live Nativity. The next morning, Gretchen awoke to the smells of bacon and coffee drifting upstairs. After freshening up, she padded down to the kitchen, still in her pajamas and robe. "Good morning, dear. Sleep okay?" her mother asked, setting a plate of bacon, eggs, and toast on the table for her. "Morning, Mom. I slept great, actually," Gretchen replied, wrapping her hands around the warm mug of coffee. "So I wanted to talk to you about Christmas plans," her mother started tentatively. "I know we usually keep things pretty low-key, but I was hoping we could resurrect Aunt Maggie's nativity this year, for old time's sake." Gretchen paused, toast halfway to her mouth. Her Aunt Maggie had organized the live nativity in Evergreen for over a decade, but passed away a few years ago. The town held a sparse lighting ceremony since, but hadn't done a full-scale nativity. "I don't know, Mom," Gretchen hesitated. "That was always Aunt Maggie's thing. I don't think I'm the right person to take that on." "Oh, but you are," her mother insisted. "You have so many fond memories of helping your aunt put it all together. And you're so organized and creative. I just know Maggie would want you to carry on the tradition." Gretchen chewed her lip, considering. She did have a deep nostalgia for those Christmas seasons, helping her Aunt Maggie sew costumes, make sets, gather animals from local farms. "Please, darling, it would mean so much to the town to bring some Christmas magic back. And I know Maggie is looking down, just beaming with pride, wanting you to do it," her mother prodded. "Okay," Gretchen finally relented with a small smile for Aunt Maggie. Her mother clapped excitedly. "Wonderful. We can go to the town hall today to arrange permits and start spreading the word. This will be so good for you, honey. Get you out meeting people while you're home." Gretchen nodded, though her stomach fluttered nervously. What had she just agreed to? She finished her breakfast silently, her mind spinning with all the work ahead. Chapter 3. blast from the past. After scrambling to get dressed, Gretchen found herself downtown at the Evergreen Town Hall with her mother. The old brick building was festively adorned with wreaths on the exterior. Inside smelled like pine from a large Christmas tree by the reception desk. They had just finished meeting with the town manager to request the permits for the live nativity when a male voice behind Gretchen called her name. She turned and was startled to see her high school ex-boyfriend, Levi Cooper. "Levi, wow, I can't believe it. How are you?" Gretchen asked, flustered. He looked much the same, tall and muscular with unruly dark hair, though he now wore a close-cropped beard. Levi flashed the cocky grin that used to make her weak in the knees. "I'm all right, just back in Evergreen recovering for a bit," he replied. "Recovering from what?" Gretchen questioned, noticing then the brace on his right leg. "Busted my knee pretty bad over at MT Elk," Levi explained, gesturing to his brace, "wiped out on one of those black diamond runs. I'll be off the slopes for a while." "Oh no, that's awful. I'm so sorry," Gretchen offered sincerely. She knew how much he loved skiing and outdoorsy adventures. This injury must have him going stir-crazy. "It is what it is, but what about you? I heard you were back helping with the live nativity," Levi said. "Word certainly travels fast around here," Gretchen muttered. "Your mom said you flew in from Boston, impressive, big shot lawyer now, huh?" Levi asked, with a hint of gentle ribbing. "Still just law school for now, but yet doing the East Coast thing." Gretchen trailed off, feeling self-conscious around Levi, who knew her as a teenager. "That's really great, Gretchen. Glad you're keeping Aunt Maggie's nativity tradition going too. Let me know if you need help with anything," Levi offered sincerely. "Of course, I'll be in touch. Take care of that knee, okay?" Gretchen said. They parted ways amicably. Despite awkwardness, it was nice to see a familiar face. And Levi had been nothing but kind. Maybe he had matured from the cocky jock he had been in the past. Chapter 4. All hands on deck. Over the next week, Gretchen enlisted volunteers and started preparations for the live nativity in earnest. Some of Aunt Maggie's old crew joined in sewing costumes, building set pieces, and gathering supplies. The work kept Gretchen busy from morning till night, distracting her from lingering melancholy. At the end of a long Saturday spent repainting plywood backdrops of Bethlehem, Gretchen's phone dinged with an incoming text. She smiled slightly, seeing it was from Levi. They had stayed in touch since running into each other at town hall. "Levi, heard you could use some extra sets of hands for the pageant bill. I've been cleared for light duty now that the worst of the swelling has gone down. Just tell me what you need." Gretchen appreciated Levi volunteering despite their awkward history. She knew he came from a religious family and suspected he had a genuine soft spot for the nativity. Her perfectionist tendencies made her want to politely decline his offer for fear he'd mess things up. But she knew beggars couldn't be choosers, so she swallowed her reservations and took him up on the help. "Gretchen, actually we could really use you. Painting and lifting some materials mainly. Meet us at the community center tomorrow 10 on. Levi, see you there. And Gretchen, thanks again for taking this on. Our town needed this." Gretchen felt an unexpected warmth in her chest at his message. She was still tentative around Levi after their rocky breakup senior year, but his offer to help was clearly genuine. The next morning, he arrived right on time wearing worn jeans and a sheepish grin. Gretchen couldn't help but laugh seeing he had come bearing gifts of coffee and donuts for the crew. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad, she thought. Chapter 5, Taking Shape. Throughout the following weeks, Levi became a steadfast volunteer for the pageant preparations. He handled even the most mundane tasks Gretchen assigned him without complaint. And he seemed to get along well with the other volunteers, mostly church groups and local high school kids looking to log community service hours. One snowy Thursday night with just over a week left until the performance, Gretchen stayed late at the community center to finish a sewing project. She furrowed her brow cutting fabric for sheep costumes, focused intensely on her work. The sound of footsteps shook her from her concentration. "Hey stranger, what you still doing here?" Levi asked, leaning against the door frame with his good leg. "Oh, just trying to get these sheep done," Gretchen sighed. "There's still so much to do before next weekend." "I know, but you've got this," Levi said, pulling up a chair beside her. "This whole production is really shaping up, Gretchen. Everyone can see how hard you've been working." Gretchen felt her cheeks warm at the praise. "Well, you've been a huge help. I really appreciate it." "It's been fun, actually, way better than sitting at home feeling sorry for myself," Levi admitted. They shared a laugh, and Gretchen realized it was the first relaxed moment they've had since reconnecting. She regarded Levi in his flannel and beat-up jeans that suited him far more than the Letterman jacket he wore in high school. Maybe they really could be friends. "So tell me, how did you get roped into becoming a shepherd?" Gretchen teased, eyeing the half-made costumes. "Hey, if a lamb costume gets me a spot near the lovely Mary in the manger, I'll take it," Levi joked. Gretchen rolled her eyes but felt a genuine smile creep onto her face. Chapter 6, Dress Rehearsal Disasters. The weekend before the Christmas pageant, the whole cast and crew gathered for a full dress rehearsal. Gretchen arrived at the community center early, her SUV loaded with costume bags and set pieces. She was running on coffee and adrenaline, anxiously awaiting to see all the preparations come together for the first time. "Looking good, boss," Levi greeted her, seeming far too awake for the 7 a.m. call time. He helped unload supplies and corral the volunteers arriving. Once everyone was gathered and had donned their robes and headdresses, Gretchen called the rehearsal to order. "Let's take our places from the top." At first, all seemed to be going smoothly as Mary mounted the donkey and Joseph led them toward the makeshift stable. But soon things devolved into chaos with missed cues and stumble blinds. The little girl cast as an angel kept sitting down and pulling off her tinsel halo. The sheep were leaving themselves on the astroturf grass. Gretchen felt her blood pressure rising as the rehearsal went further and further off the rails. This was a disaster. All her hard work only to have it end up a laughingstock. She was struggling not to come unglued when Levi seemed to sense her distress and intervened. "Looking great, everyone. Let's maybe just go through the blocking once more without costumes before we call it a day," he directed. After some shuffling and murmurs of relief, the cast got into position again sans costumes and props. Levi shot Gretchen a sympathetic look and mouthed it's okay. For some reason, his reassurance calmed her racing pulse. She remembered that none of the volunteers had to be here sacrificing their weekend. It didn't need to look perfect. After rehearsal, Gretchen thanked everyone for coming and promised more polish before the big debut on Christmas Eve. The reassurances felt hollow to her ears, but no one else seemed dismayed. As the last stragglers finally cleared out, Levi once again seemed to read her mind and pulled her into a comforting sideways hug. "It's coming together," he promised. "They just need someone to guide them, and I think she's standing right next to me." Gretchen let herself exhale and lean into the embrace. For the first time in weeks, she let the tension leave her shoulders. Levi was right. Progress didn't mean perfection. And for the first time, she was realizing he had changed from the arrogant teen he once was. The realization left her feeling like she was seeing Levi clearly for the first time. Chapter 7. Let the show go on. After weeks of preparation, Christmas Eve arrived at last. Gretchen stood backstage in the community center auditorium, peering nervously through the curtain at the crowd filing into the folding chairs. She could make out familiar faces from around town and see the excited glow on children's faces. She nearly jumped, feeling a hand gently squeeze her shoulder. Levi stood behind her, dressed in his shepherd's robes and headscarf. "How are you holding up?" he asked kindly. "Oh, just quietly panicking," Gretchen chuckled with nervous humor. "You've got this. All you need to do is give the cues and let us do our thing. We're ready for our Broadway debut," Levi joked. Gretchen mustered a grateful smile in return. Ever the director, she hurried off to check that everyone was dressed and in place for the procession. She peeked through the curtain once more and saw that the auditorium was now packed to capacity. After a deep breath, she dimmed the lights and gave the signal for the organist to begin playing. Gretchen's heart swelled hearing the familiar notes of "O Come All Ye Faithful" as Mary and Joseph led their donkey down the center aisle by candlelight. It was really happening. The cast performed their parts with extra gusto for the eager audience. The sheep mostly stayed in line, and only one shepherd forgot his line. All the weeks of work were finally being brought to life before her eyes. Just as Mary and Joseph reached the makeshift stable and settled into the hay, the loud wail of a siren pierced through the tranquil scene. Gretchen's gut tightened. Moments later, a fireman entered through the backstage door looking grave. "Sorry folks, but we've got to clear the building. Blizzard is taking down trees and power lines all over. This storm came on fast. Roads are getting too dangerous," he announced unceremoniously. A collective awe of disappointment rose from the crowd. Gretchen felt like she had been punched. It couldn't end like this. But one glance out the window at the accumulating snow and whipping wind told her there was no choice. People began collecting their coats and bags to hastily exit into the worsening weather. Gretchen's shoulders slumped in defeat. It was over after all the work and expectation. Just then, she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. She turned with wet eyes to see Levi looking at her intently. "It's not over yet, come with me," he said. Chapter 8. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Before she knew what was happening, Gretchen found herself bundled in her wool coat, following Levi out the backstage door into the swirling snow. "Levi, where are we going?" Gretchen yelled over the wind. "You'll see," he called back. They crunched through the mounting snowbanks until the tall steeple of the neighborhood church came into view. Levi led them around to the side door. Mercifully unlocked, it opened into the dark choir loft. Below the choir area, the nativity scene was still set up on the altar surrounded by poinsettias. Levi flicked on the lights, illuminating the empty pews and ornate decorations. "It doesn't have to be over yet," Levi said breathlessly. "We can still do this." Gretchen blinked in surprise as she realized what he meant. Their breath came out in icy puffs as they stared at each other, with icy flakes dusting their hair and coats. "I don't have music or props or..." Gretchen sputtered. "We don't need any of that. It's about the story. We'll make our own music," Levi interrupted. He began humming "O Come All Ye Faithful" and strode down the side aisle to the nativity scene. Gretchen watched, stunned, as he took his place next to the empty manger and looked up at her expectantly. Somehow, his playful gesture melted her frozen heart. She found herself walking down the aisle to join him as he continued humming the melody. Once beside him, Levi began reciting from memory the Christmas story, just as she had so often heard in church services from childhood. He dramatically recounted the census travel to Bethlehem, finding no room at the inn, and the baby Jesus born in humble surroundings. Gretchen chimed in, adding description to set the scene: the cozy stable with hay bales and sleeping animals, the Star of Bethlehem illuminating the miracle birth below. She found herself getting swept up in the story, as if the figurines before them were coming to life. Levi mimed holding swaddling clothes and laying the babe in the manger tenderly. The church around them faded away until it felt like they stood hand in hand witnessing that holy night. As Levi mimed rocking Jesus and singing away in a manger, his baritone voice reverberated through the empty sanctuary. Gretchen harmonized, then found herself singing familiar carols. Levi joined in, their voices filling the space with joy. When they finally fell silent, the wind howling outside was the only sound. Gretchen turned to Levi with eyes shining. "Thank you for reminding me what this is really all about," Gretchen said softly. Levi smiled down at her, still holding her hand in his. "Of course, I think we both needed the reminder tonight." They stood in the flickering candlelight looking at one another, faces inches apart. Gretchen felt as if seeing Levi clearly for the first time. Underneath the former cocky jock was a kind heart and creative soul. "We should probably get back before this storm gets worse," Levi finally said gently. Gretchen nodded, the spell broken. They made their way silently back out into the wintry mix, hands still clasped together against the cold. The snow swirled around them like their own snow globe as they headed down the deserted street. "Do you need a ride home? Your place is on my way," Levi offered. "That would be great, thanks," Gretchen said. They climbed into Levi's pickup truck and carefully made their way through the snow-covered roads to Gretchen's family home. Inside the warm cab, Christmas carols played softly on the radio as Gretchen stole glances at Levi's profile. Too soon, they pulled up in front of her house, visible only by the twinkle lights along the roofline. "Thanks again, Levi, you saved the performance tonight and reminded me what matters," Gretchen said. "Anytime, I'll see you for the cleanup crew tomorrow?" he asked. Gretchen nodded. Overcome with emotion, she leaned over and gently kissed Levi's cold cheek before hurrying from the truck up to her front door. Inside, she watched from the window as he waited until she was safely inside before driving slowly away into the silent, snowy night. Chapter 9: Meltdown. The day after the live nativity, Gretchen arrived to help clean up, feeling more confused than ever about Levi. After years apart, the childhood sweethearts seemed to reconnect through working together. But where did they stand? During cleanup, she tried to act normal, but inside her emotions were swirling. She kept replaying their intimate moment, performing the impromptu nativity in her mind. Levi gave no indication if he was also feeling changed by recent events. He chatted casually with the other volunteers as they packed away costumes and disassembled the set pieces. Gretchen wasn't sure if she felt relieved or disappointed by Levi's breezy, detached behavior. After the final items were hauled away to storage, the community center auditorium was back to an empty room with a linoleum floor. The magic of their makeshift Bethlehem was now packed away in boxes for another year. Gretchen stood in the barren space feeling deflated. It was silly, but she couldn't help but mourn the loss of the world they had brought to life these past weeks. With the spectacle gone, she just felt alone and uncertain about the future once again. On the walk to her car, Gretchen was lost in melancholy thought when she suddenly slipped on a patch of ice in the parking lot. She flailed trying to catch herself, but still landed hard on her back, knocking the wind out of her. "Gretchen, are you okay?" Levi called out, rushing over to help her up. I'm fine, Gretchen tried to brush it off, but winced, feeling a sharp pain in her wrist. "No, you're not, let me see," Levi said gently, examining her wrist that was already swelling and bruising. "I think you sprained it pretty bad in that fall." Now that the adrenaline was wearing off, Gretchen had to admit he was probably right. Her wrist was throbbing painfully after catching herself in the fall. Levi wrapped a supportive arm around her and steered her back inside the community center to find ice and bandages. Gretchen sank into a folding chair while he fetched first aid supplies. Embarrassed by her clumsiness and overwhelmed by the letdown after the pageant, Gretchen felt herself on the brink of tears. When Levi returned with ice packs and wraps, she finally let the tears fall. "Hey, it's all right. You're going to heal up just fine," Levi tried to soothe her, thinking she was just in pain. He didn't realize her meltdown had an emotional release behind it too. But Levi's calm presence and care-taking only made Gretchen cry harder. She was just so exhausted and confused. Levi awkwardly held her as she let it all pour out. Finally, Gretchen composed herself, wiping her eyes with her good hand. "I'm so sorry about that, Levi. I don't know what came over me." "Don't apologize. You've had a long few weeks, but I hope you know I'm here for you if you need to talk or anything," Levi said softly, handing her a tissue. Gretchen nodded gratefully. She let out a long sigh, feeling the emotion and tension leave her body. Maybe the meltdown is just what she needed to keep moving forward instead of getting stuck in her own head. Chapter 10. Baby, It's Cold Outside. The week of Christmas rolled around all too quickly. Gretchen was kept busy helping her mom bake cookies and prepare food for their family celebration. She also tried to use her free time to explore Evergreen and do some last-minute shopping at the quaint local businesses around town. One snowy afternoon, she popped into Evergreen Outfitters, the local gear shop, hoping to find a gift for her brother. As she was browsing the clothing racks, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Gretchen, fancy seeing you here," Levi said. His eyes dropped briefly to the brace still on her injured wrist. "How's the wrist doing?" "Oh, good as new," she said, demonstrating that she now had more mobility back. "Just finished up my last PT session this week." "That's great. Looks like you'll be back on the slopes in no time," Levi said. "How about you? I know you must be eager to get that knee fully healed up," Gretchen replied. Levi nodded. "Slowly but surely making progress. I convinced my doctor to let me hit some green runs if I wear a brace, so that's something at least." "That'll be nice for you over the holidays, I bet." A brief lull settled between them. Despite their history and recent bonding experience, things still felt unresolved. Both had trouble finding the right words when they were alone. "Well, I should let you get back to your shopping. Have a nice Christmas, Gretchen," Levi finally said, turning to go. "Levi, wait." The words were out before Gretchen even realized what she was doing. He stopped, looking back over his shoulder quizzically. I've really enjoyed reconnecting with you these past few weeks. and I know the holidays can be rough for a lot of people. So I wanted to let you know that if you find yourself with time to kill, you're always welcome to stop by for some of my mom's famous sugar cookies or to help us finish off the eggnog," Gretchen said in a rush. Levi looked surprised but pleased by the invitation. A smile spread across his handsome face. "That sounds really nice, actually. I just may take you up on it before break is over." "Great, enjoy the rest of your shopping," Gretchen said. She felt her own smile broaden as Levi gave a little wave and headed for the exit. Maybe she could leave the past in the past where it belonged, and see if this new caring, thoughtful Levi could be a part of her future instead. Chapter 11: Mistletoe and Wine. On Christmas Eve, Gretchen was helping her mom put the finishing touches on dinner when the doorbell rang. Her mother hurried off to grab it, returning a moment later with Levi trailing behind carrying a festive poinsettia. "Look who's here to join us," her mother announced. Gretchen smiled, thankful she had decided to change from her flower-covered sweats into a green holiday sweater dress and boots when she started on her hair and makeup earlier. "Come on in, Levi. So glad you could make it," Gretchen greeted him warmly. The childhood friends spent the evening enjoying a hearty meal together and reminiscing over childhood Christmas memories. Following dinner, they gathered in the living room to exchange gifts. Levi surprised Gretchen by presenting her with a framed photo he had taken on the night of their improvised nativity in the church. The black and white candid shot captured Gretchen looking up at Levi with snowflakes in her hair as he told the Christmas story. "I know that evening was meaningful for both of us. I thought you should have this to remember it," Levi explained. "It's perfect, thank you, Levi," Gretchen said, truly touched by the thoughtful gift. After gifts, Gretchen's mom shooed them out of the kitchen, insisting they go enjoy some reprieve from cleanup duty. Grabbing her coat, Gretchen led Levi out onto the back porch with mugs of peppermint cocoa to take in the lightly falling snow. They sat side by side on the porch swing, an old quilt tucked around their legs to ward off the winter night chill. Gretchen sighed contentedly, looking out at the Christmas lights adorning the trees in a warm glow. "It's nice to just sit and enjoy the holiday magic, isn't it?" Gretchen mused. "It is," Levi agreed. "Being with you like this almost feels like old times, but also somehow brand new." Gretchen turned to Levi, noticing he was looking at her intently. "Gretchen, Levi started. He was cut off by Gretchen's mom swinging open the back door. "You two better come inside quick. It's time to open one present each like we do every Christmas Eve," she called out merrily. Gretchen and Levi shared a look, both reluctant to leave this private reverie. "We better go in before the hot cocoa gets cold," Gretchen finally said. They stood and headed for the door. Just before going inside, Levi stopped under the door frame. Gretchen paused beside him and followed his gaze up to the mistletoe hanging from the eave. Levi leaned in slowly until their faces were just inches apart. Gretchen closed her eyes as he closed the small gap between them to press his lips softly against hers. She breathed in the spice of his cologne, mixed with the piney mistletoe above them. When they finally parted, Gretchen kept her hand wrapped in Levi's as they headed inside to join her eagerly waiting mom. No matter what the future held, she wanted to stay in this perfect Christmas moment for as long as possible. Chapter 12: Once Upon a December. The next morning, Gretchen awoke thinking the romantic Christmas Eve evening must have been too good to be true. She expected to find just a plain text from Levi saying he had made it home safely in the snow. So when her phone lit up with an incoming call from Levi first thing Christmas morning, Her heart skipped a beat. "Merry Christmas," his cheerful voice greeted her through the phone. "I hope it's not too early, but I wanted to see if you'd like to go on a Christmas adventure with me today before you get roped into family time." "That sounds amazing," Gretchen agreed without hesitation. She had assumed Levi would want to spend the day with his own family. She quickly threw on jeans, boots, and her warmest wool coat before heading downstairs. Levi picked her up in his truck shortly after. "So where are we off to?" Gretchen asked. "You'll see, I scoped it out yesterday, and it's absolutely magical with the fresh snowfall," Levi said. He popped a Bob Said Your Christmas CD into the stereo as they drove out of town. Gretchen grinned, taking in the scenic snow-covered forests and hills rolling past her window. Evergreen was truly picturesque as a winter wonderland. When they turned down an unplowed side road, she looked at Levi questioningly. "Are you taking me out here to murder me on Christmas?" she joked. "Drat, you've uncovered my sinister plot," Levi joked back. "We're almost there, I promise." The truck slowed as the road opened up into a large clearing. Gretchen gasped, seeing an enormous Christmas tree farm sprawling before them. The freshly blanketed, towering pines were breathtaking to behold. Levi came around to open Gretchen's door and helped her step down into the pristine snow. Hand in hand, they wandered quietly down the rows of Christmas trees, standing like silent sentinels honoring the holy day. As they walked, fluffy snowflakes began drifting down again, adding to the already thick coating on the ground and branches. Gretchen tilted her head back, catching flakes on her tongue like when she was a child. Their laughter echoed through the forest as they had an impromptu snowball fight, neither caring about acting grown-up today. Breathless from laughter and play, they came to rest side by side on a snowy bank, mittens brushing as they gazed up through the pine boughs. "It's like we're the only two people on Earth out here," Gretchen whispered. "Like their own private Narnia wonderland." "Nowhere I'd rather be on Christmas than on an adventure with you," Levi said, giving her mittened hand a squeeze. Gretchen snuggled into Levi's shoulder, wishing they really could stop time and stay lost in the beauty and magic of the moment. She had never felt closer to someone than Levi in this fairy tale forest on Christmas morning. Chapter 13. What are you doing New Year's Eve? The week between Christmas and New Year's seemed to pass in the blink of an eye. Before Gretchen knew it, her last day in Evergreen had arrived. She kept herself busy helping her mom prep food for the neighborhood New Year's Eve party they hosted each year. Part of her was eager to get back east and dive into her final law school semester. But part of her heart felt tugged to stay in the idyllic snow globe town she had come to appreciate anew. And of course, to stay near Levi. They had shared intermittent romantic moments since Christmas stolen kisses while sledding, snuggling during a holiday movie. But Gretchen still felt unsure where they stood. Did Levi want to try a long-distance relationship? Or just reminisce over their seasonal fling in the future? Her mind reeled with questions she was afraid to ask. By evening, the house was full of guests dressed in sequins and bow ties, champagne glasses clinking. Gretchen slipped away from a conversation with old high school friends to sneak outside for some fresh air. She breathed in the cold night air, watching partygoers through the frosty window panes. Inside, everyone was gushing about hopes for the new year, but Gretchen couldn't shake her sadness at leaving this place and the people she had come to care for. Lost in thought, she didn't hear the porch door swing open. Gretchen started feeling Levi drape his wool coat over her bare shoulders. "Thanks," she said, pulling it tighter around herself. Penny for your thoughts? Levi asked. Just thinking about the inevitable passage of time, Gretchen joked to brush off her melancholy. Levi nodded. Hard to believe tomorrow this will all be just a memory, huh? I don't want it to just be a memory, Gretchen confessed softly, her breath making icy clouds in the night air. I wish I could stay in this beautiful place with you. Why can't you? Levi asked gently. Gretchen looked up at him surprised. Was he saying? Levi took her mittened hands in his own. His hazel eyes reflected the sparkling holiday lights as he looked deeply into her eyes. Gretchen, this has been the best holiday season I've had in years being with you. I've never felt happier or more like the man I want to be. I know you have big career dreams and plans back east, but I had to ask, why not stay? Gretchen's head was spinning at his heartfelt words. Stay in Evergreen and build a life with Levi? The hometown boy she never forgot. It seemed like a dream. Gretchen faltered, overcome with emotion. Just then, lively cheering sounded from inside as the countdown started. 10, 9, 8. Gretchen looked up at Levi. She didn't need to wait for midnight for her answer. Yes, she cried. I want that fresh start here with you. Their lips met as fireworks exploded in the midnight sky. Gretchen knew in her heart this would be the first kiss of many in their lifetime together. The end.